The mining colony of New Dawn floated like a lonely spark in the black sea of space, a small human outpost built on the dusty surface of Earth's farthest moon, Solara. Life here was slow and predictable. People mined ore, repaired machines, and watched the distant stars. Children played in narrow corridors, workers joked over recycled coffee, and every night the sky showed a quiet, peaceful stretch of shining dots. For years, Earth had been silent on the galactic stage, keeping away from trouble after the long wars that nearly broke it. Most people believed the galaxy had forgotten about humans, but on this day, that belief was shattered. It started as a faint shadow moving across the horizon. At first, no one noticed. Shadows were normal on Solara, caused by passing asteroids or drifting debris. But then the shadow grew larger, darker, until it swallowed the sunlight. Miners stepped out of their tunnels, squinting upward, their voices dropping to uneasy whispers. The colony's sensors lit up with warnings, massive. Shapes were entering the moon's orbit, too big to be civilian ships. Commander Rin, the colony's leader, hurried to the control tower and froze as the display showed a fleet of enormous alien warships, black metal beasts with jagged wings and glowing red engines. The largest ship moved to the front, dwarfing the others. A deep, rumbling signal blasted through every communicator, every speaker, every device. The voice was not human. It was cold, sharp, and heavy with authority. "Humans of this system," it said, "you are now under the rule of the Zerath Dominion. You will surrender all resources and accept our control. Resistance will mean destruction." The entire colony went silent. The Zerath were only a rumor in most human worlds, a powerful alien empire said to crush civilizations in days. They were known to believe humans were weak, underdeveloped, and unworthy of space. Now they were here, and their message was clear. Human life had no value to them. Rin sent urgent distress signals to Earth and every nearby colony. The operators watched the screen as the messages blinked out into space, carrying desperate pleas for help. Hours passed. No answer came. On the streets, people gathered in frightened groups. "Maybe Earth can't help," someone said. "Maybe they have nothing left." Fear spread like smoke in the air. In the mess hall, a young engineer named Jace sat alone, staring at the warning lights on his portable scanner. He had seen the Zerath ships up close through his maintenance telescope. They were armed with weapons far beyond human technology. In his heart, he knew if Earth didn't respond, Solara was doomed. But giving up was not in his nature. Outside, the sky grew darker as the alien fleet adjusted its position. Then, without warning, a bright beam shot down from the flagship, hitting the ground far outside the colony. The explosion shook the buildings, sending dust clouds rolling through the streets. It was a warning shot, a taste of what they could. Moments later, the alien voice returned, colder than before. "You have 10 hours to surrender. After that, there will be no mercy." The timer appeared on every screen, counting down from 10 Noguero. Commander Rin tried again to contact Earth. Nothing. In the control room, officers looked at each other, fear clear in their eyes. "What if there's no fleet? What if we're on our own?" someone whispered. In the back of the room, Jace stood quietly, his mind already racing with ideas, not all of them safe. Outside the dome of the colony, the alien ships floated like predators circling prey, their red lights blinking in the dark. The people of Solara had always thought of space as vast and empty. Now it felt like a cage, with the Zerath holding the key. Somewhere far away, on the distant blue planet called Earth, someone might be listening, or maybe not. No one in Solara knew the truth. But above them, in the deep shadow of the alien fleet, the countdown kept ticking, each second louder than the last. High Warlord Krathos sat on the command throne of the Zerath flagship, his tall, armored frame glowing faintly under the crimson lights of the bridge. His eyes, like molten gold, scanned the tactical display of Solara. To him, this was just another small conquest, another weak species to bend under the Dominion's control. Around him, alien officers moved with cold precision, their clawed hands tapping controls, their voices sharp and efficient. "The humans have not surrendered," one officer said. Krathos gave a low, humorless laugh. "Of course they have not. They are stubborn animals. We will break them soon." His voice carried a cruel certainty. A moment later, a transmission was sent to every human settlement in the system. Krathos's face appeared on every screen, his scaled skin, ridged skull, and blazing eyes filling the view. "Humans," he declared, "you have lived too long in the shadows, thinking the galaxy has forgotten you. The Zerath Dominion does not forget. We take what we want, and we leave nothing for the weak. Surrender now, and some of you may live. Resist, and all of you will burn." The message played on repeat, a constant echo in every home, every corridor, every ship. On Solara, people could not escape his voice. Mothers held their children close, workers stared at blank walls, and the streets felt colder than before. In the colony control room, Commander Rin tried again to reach Earth. Still no answer. The hope that had been thin in Part 1 now felt like it was breaking. Some of the younger officers began whispering that maybe surrender was the only option. Maybe it was better to live under alien rule than die here in the dark. Rin slammed his fist on the console. "We are not giving up yet." Far away, on Earth, deep underground in a hidden command center that no civilian knew existed, a very different scene unfolded. Screens lined the walls, showing live feeds from Solara and other colonies under threat. Silent figures stood watching, men and women in dark uniforms, their faces hard but focused. In the center of the room stood Admiral Serena Holt, her silver hair tied back, her uniform crisp despite the late hour. She had fought in the last Great War, a legend among the old fleet, but most of the galaxy believed she had retired years ago. Now she was back, summoned for one reason. On the largest screen, the image of the alien fleet over Solara burned bright. "They've moved sooner than expected," Holt said quietly. Beside her, a tall officer nodded. "The Aegis is ready for deployment, Admiral. We can launch in less than 40 hours. Holt's gaze stayed on the alien ships. "Too long. They'll destroy Solara before then." She walked to a small table where a hologram of the Aegis floated in the air. A massive shape the size of a small moon, bristling with weapons, engines, and shield arrays. It had been built in secret for decades, hidden from both humans and aliens alike. Its very existence was a classified truth, known only to a handful of people. To the rest of the galaxy, Earth was just a recovering, harmless world. That was the point. "If we launch now," one commander said, "we'll reveal our hand. The other empires will know we've been building in secret. The Council might—" Holt cut him off with a sharp wave. "If we wait, Solara dies. If we move now, we still have a chance to save them." Around the table, the officers exchanged uneasy looks. They all knew what the Aegis could do. It was not just a warship. It was a message to the galaxy that humanity was not as weak as everyone thought. Back on Solara, the countdown ticked lower. 8 hours left. Jace, the young engineer, worked alone in the dim light of a maintenance bay. His hands moved fast over a half-disassembled drone. If he could rewire it, he might be able to disrupt the alien scanning systems, buy a little more time for the colony. But he had no idea if Earth would even hear about his effort. All he knew was that sitting and waiting to die was not an option. Outside, the alien ships drifted in perfect formation, their weapons powered, but not firing. They were in no hurry. The prey had nowhere to run. In the alien flagship, General Vekar, Kratos' second-in-command, stepped forward. "High Warlord, I sense something unusual. The humans are too quiet. They are afraid, yes, but not broken. It is strange." Kratos waved him off. "Fear makes them foolish. Let them think they have a chance. It will make their defeat sweeter." Vekar's golden eyes narrowed, but he said nothing. He had fought many wars for the Dominion, and something about this silence felt wrong. On Earth, Admiral Holt made her choice. "Send the activation code to all colonies," she ordered. "Tell them one thing. Hold the line. Reinforcements are coming." A young officer typed the message, sending it through encrypted channels. In Solara's control room, Rin's console beeped. A short text appeared on the screen. "Hold the line. Reinforcements coming." For the first time in days, Rin allowed himself a small smile. Around him, the officers straightened, the whispers of surrender dying away. The people of Solara did not know what reinforcements meant, but the fact that Earth had answered was enough to light a spark of hope. Jace received the same message on his small communicator. His eyes narrowed. "All right," he muttered. "Then I'll make sure we're still here when they get here." Above them, Kratos leaned forward in his throne, watching the human colony through the ship's viewport. 8 hours, he said softly. "Then we end them." In the shadows of space, far beyond the reach of the alien sensors, something stirred, a massive object hidden behind the far side of Earth's moon. Engines hummed quietly, power systems came online, and the Aegis began to wake. The underground command center on Earth was a place without windows, buried so deep that even the strongest scanners could not find it. It had been built in the final years of the old wars, meant to be a last shelter for humanity's leaders. But over the decades, it had grown into the beating heart of Earth's secret defense. Here, men and women worked in silence, watching 100 screens, tracking movements across the galaxy. In the center of the room, Admiral Serena Holt stood, like a statue of iron, her sharp eyes fixed on the tactical displays. She was a legend in the fleet, a strategist whose victories had saved Earth more than once, but to most of the world she was nothing more than a retired veteran living quietly somewhere far away. That had been the plan. Let the galaxy think. The old warriors were gone. Let them think Earth was harmless. In truth, Holt and a handful of others had spent decades preparing for a moment exactly like this. She turned to the main engineering officer, a short, broad-shouldered man named Cade. "Status of the Aegis?" she asked. Cade's hands danced over the controls, bringing up a rotating hologram of the massive ship. "All systems at 98%, Admiral. Weapons are charged, shields ready. We're running final checks on the hypershift drive now." Holt studied the image. The Aegis was not just a ship. It was the largest human-made structure in history, almost the size of a small moon, its surface layered with armor plating, energy shield nodes, and weapon batteries that could tear apart an enemy fleet in minutes. For years, it had been hidden on the far side of Earth's moon, kept out of sight from alien patrols. Its engines were silent, its lights dark, and only the most trusted officers knew it existed. Holt remembered the first day she had seen its skeleton being assembled, the towering framework rising from the lunar surface. She had known then that if the galaxy ever came for humanity again, this would be the answer. But she also knew they only had one chance to reveal it. Once the Aegis appeared, the whole galaxy would know Earth was not as weak as it seemed, and that would change everything. Back on Solara, the message from Earth had spread through the colony like a spark through dry grass. People who had been ready to surrender now stood straighter, their voices steadier. Commander Rin called an emergency meeting in the colony's main dome, telling the people that reinforcements were on the way. He did not know what kind, and he did not mention the possibility that they might arrive too late. But hope was a powerful thing, and for now it was enough. In a dim maintenance bay, Jace was still working on his plan. The alien fleet's scanning. Systems were powerful, but he had noticed something strange. They used a frequency that could be disrupted by an overload of certain energy patterns. If he could modify one of the colony's mining drones, he might be able to create a burst of interference strong enough to blind the aliens for a few minutes. It wasn't much, but it could buy time, and time was what the colony needed. As he worked, he thought of the reinforcements. What could Earth possibly send? Their last known fleets had been small and outdated, nothing that could stand against the Zerath. The aliens themselves seemed unconcerned, their massive ships floating, in silent formation above the moon like predators waiting for the kill. On the alien flagship, General Vekar approached Krathos again. "High Warlord, I still believe we should not underestimate these humans. I have fought them before. They adapt quickly." Krathos gave a slow, cruel smile. "Let them adapt. It will make their destruction more satisfying. In 8 hours there will be nothing left of Solara but dust." Vekar bowed his head, but inside, unease twisted through him. He had learned long ago to trust his instincts, and his instincts were warning him now. Back on Earth, the final preparations for the Aegis were underway. Engineers in pressure suits moved along its massive hull, checking every weapon mount and shield emitter. Deep inside the ship, crew members were taking their stations. Gunners, pilots, engineers, communications officers, all hand-picked from the best the human fleet had to offer. The ship's command bridge was a vast chamber lined with glowing consoles, a panoramic view of space stretching across its forward windows. Admiral Holt walked onto the bridge, her boots echoing on the metal floor. She looked at the crew, each one standing at attention. "You all know why we're here," she said, her voice steady but carrying the weight of history. "The galaxy thinks Earth is weak. They think we are finished. Today we show them they are wrong. The Aegis is not just a ship. It is our answer to every empire that ever thought humanity could be broken. And it is our promise to every human world that we will never leave them alone in the dark." The crew saluted. Holt turned to the helm. "Bring engines online. Prepare for launch." Across the lunar surface, massive doors began to open, revealing the full length of the Aegis as it lifted slowly into the air. The ship's engines ignited with a low, deep roar that vibrated through the ground. On Solara, no one could see it, yet. But the countdown on their screens kept ticking, and somewhere in the depths of space, the thing that might save them was coming awake. The hours on Solara passed like slow drops of water falling into an empty well, each one louder than the last. The alien fleet still hovered above, their massive black shapes blotting out the stars. The countdown on every human screen showed just under 6 hours left until the Zerath deadline expired. In the colony's control room, Commander Rin stood with his officers, watching the alien positions. "They are waiting for us to break," Rin said quietly, "but we are not going to give them that satisfaction." Meanwhile, in the maintenance bay, Jace tightened the last bolts on his modified drone. Its frame was scratched and worn, its power core overclocked far beyond safety limits. If his calculations were right, it would emit an energy burst strong, enough to scramble the alien scanning grid for several minutes. If he was wrong, it would just explode in place and accomplish nothing. He wiped sweat from his forehead, glanced at the timer on the wall, and muttered, "Better than doing nothing." Outside the dome, the alien flagship sent down a landing craft, flanked by smaller fighters. Krathos had decided to send a warning to the humans, destroy a few of their supply depots, kill a few resistors, and watch fear spread. The landing craft moved toward the surface like a hunting hawk. Jace saw them on his scanner and knew this was his only chance. He pushed the drone toward the airlock, activated its flight program, and sent it straight toward the alien ships. In the control room, Rin saw the strange blip on the radar and frowned. "What is that?" No one answered, but moments later the blip reached the alien formation. A sudden wave of static ripped through every Zerath sensor display. On the alien flagship, Vekar slammed his claws on his console. "We've lost visual feeds from our forward scouts. Something is interfering with our systems." Krathos's eyes narrowed. "Find it. Destroy it." But the drone had already completed its task, releasing a powerful pulse that knocked out short-range targeting for the entire formation. Down on Solara, Rin saw the opportunity. "Get the fighters in. The air now," he ordered. A handful of small human craft shot from the colony's hangar, their engines screaming. They were outdated models, nothing compared to the sleek alien warships, but for the moment, the Zerath could not lock weapons. The human fighters dove toward the landing craft, firing bursts from their rail cannons. One alien escort exploded. In a bright flash, pieces scattering into the void. In the streets of Solara, civilians looked up and saw the battle for the first time. Small human ships weaving between giant alien machines, firing against impossible odds. Hope stirred again, fragile but alive. Krathos watched the scene from his command throne, his expression turning from amusement to irritation. "So the animals bite back," he said coldly. "Send in the second wave, crush them." Massive energy blasts lit up the darkness as the Zerath ships fired blindly, their targeting still scrambled. 2 more alien escorts went down before the interference faded. Once the scanners cleared, the tide turned instantly. Alien cannons locked on to the human fighters, tearing 2 of them apart in seconds. Rin gave the recall order, knowing they could not afford to lose the rest. Jace watched the surviving fighters return and felt a strange mix of pride and fear. His drone had worked. It had given them a chance, but the cost had been heavy. In the alien flagship, Vekar studied the scan logs. "High Warlord, the disruption was artificial. The humans sent something to attack our systems." Krathos leaned forward. "Find the one who did it. Make them regret it." Back on Earth, the Aegis had cleared the lunar surface and was moving into open space. Admiral Holt stood on the bridge, watching as the stars shifted outside the massive forward windows. "Set course for Solara," she ordered. The helm officer confirmed, and the ship's enormous engines roared to life. A deep vibration rolled through its decks as the hypershift drive began to charge. Crew members worked quickly, checking weapon calibration and shield harmonics. The Aegis was a fortress, but even a fortress could fall if it faced enough firepower. Holt knew they would be facing the Zerath's full fleet, and she intended to make sure Solara survived to see the end of it. On Solara, the countdown reached 5 hours. The colony's defenses were minimal, shield generators barely strong, enough to handle small meteor strikes, a few anti-ship turrets, and whatever civilian vessels could be fitted with weapons. But now the people worked with renewed determination. Mechanics rushed to repair damaged fighters, miners welded armor plates to transport craft, and engineers worked on jury-rigging shield boosters. In the middle of it all, Jace kept his head down, avoiding questions about the drone. He knew the aliens would be searching for the source of the interference, and if they found out it was him, they would not hesitate to make him an example. Far above, the alien fleet regrouped. Krathos had lost his patience. "Prepare the planetary strike cannons," he commanded. "When the countdown ends, Solara will be nothing but a memory." His voice was calm, almost bored, but his eyes burned with the desire to end the resistance once and for all. General Vekar gave the order, but his unease had only grown. Something in his instincts whispered that the humans were not as helpless as they appeared. Something was coming. And far away, beyond the reach of Zerath sensors, the Aegis tore through space like a silent predator, its colossal frame glowing faintly as it moved toward the battle. In the cold darkness of space between Earth and Solara, the Aegis moved like a silent giant, its massive frame casting a shadow that no one could see yet, but that would soon change everything. On its bridge, Admiral Serena Holt stood with her, hands clasped behind her back, watching the swirling tunnel of hypershift energy outside the forward viewport. Every second brought them closer to the battlefield, but every second also carried the risk that the Zerath might discover them too soon. "Communications," Holt said without looking away. "Send the signal to all colonies. Keep it short and make sure it's encrypted beyond their scanners." The officer nodded, fingers flying over the console. Moments later, a pulse of data left the Aegis, bouncing off hidden relays and reaching human settlements across the system. On Solara, Commander Rin's console beeped with a new message. He opened it and saw only 5 words in bold letters. "Hold the line. Reinforcements coming." For a moment, the control room was silent. Then slowly, heads began to lift, and eyes that had been dull with fear now sparked with something else. Hope. "Earth has heard us," Rin said, his voice steady. "They are coming." The message spread through the colony like a heartbeat. People working in the hangars passed it along, miners repairing old ships shouted it to others, and even children repeated it in whispers, as if saying it would make it come true faster. In the maintenance bay, Jace saw the words on his portable screen and felt a rush of relief. Whoever had sent this wasn't lying. Something was on its way. "Guess I better make sure we're still breathing when they arrive," he muttered, returning to work on patching together the damaged shield emitters. Above Solara, Krathos received a report from one of his officers. "High Warlord, the human communications have increased suddenly. They are transmitting encrypted signals." Krathos waved a clawed hand dismissively. "It doesn't matter. They have no allies worth calling. This is their last day." But General Vekar's gaze lingered on the tactical map. He could feel something in the pattern of those transmissions, a quiet confidence that did not match the desperation he expected. On the Aegis, systems lit up one by one as final checks were completed. Massive rail cannons swiveled into position, missile batteries locked into their launch racks, and the ship's main energy lance, the largest weapon humanity had ever built, hummed with barely contained power. Holt moved to the center of the bridge. "All crew, prepare for combat. When we arrive, there will be no time for second chances. Every shot must count." Across the decks, gunners checked targeting data, shield operators ran simulations, and pilots readied their fighter wings. The Aegis was not just a ship, it was an army. Back on Solara, the colony scrambled to hold out. Rin ordered the deployment of automated defense turrets along the outer ring, knowing they would only slow the enemy, but every second mattered now. Jace coordinated with other engineers to reroute power from non-essential systems to the shields, pushing them beyond safe levels. They all knew the cost of failure. The alien fleet would turn the colony into ash the moment the timer hit 0. In the alien flagship, Krathos prepared his final warning. His image appeared once again on every human screen, his deep voice cutting through static. "Your time is almost gone. In 5 hours we will erase this colony. Surrender and some of you may be spared." But this time fewer people were listening. They had the message from Earth now, and that meant something was coming. Krathos noticed the change in their faces, and it only made his fury grow. "When I am done here," he snarled to Vekar, "there will be no doubt in the galaxy about what happens to those who defy the Zerath Dominion." Vekar gave a short bow, but kept his thoughts to himself. Something in him told him that this battle would not be as simple as the High Warlord believed. Far across the void, the hypershift tunnel around the Aegis began to thin, the swirling lights fading into the blackness of normal space. The stars reappeared, and in the distance, faint and small on the horizon, hung Solara, and the massive alien fleet surrounding it. The bridge of the Aegis fell silent as the crew saw the enemy for the first time. Even from this distance, the Zerath ships looked like a wall of steel and fire. their crimson lights glowing in the dark. "Distance to target?" Holt asked. 2 million kilometers and closing, the helm replied. "Weapons range in 6 minutes." Holt's eyes stayed locked on the enemy fleet. "Good. Let's make our entrance count." On Solara, no one yet knew that their reinforcements were already in sight. The aliens continued their slow orbit, their planetary cannons charging, their fighter patrols sweeping the skies. The people of the colony braced themselves, holding the line as they had been told, unaware that the shadow of the Aegis was drawing closer with every passing heartbeat, and in the quiet space between those two forces, the galaxy held its breath. The space above Solara had been the same for hours, a vast black canvas painted with the red lights of the Zerath fleet. But then, without warning, something began to change. At first, it was subtle, a faint shift in the darkness beyond the alien ships, as if a piece of the night itself was moving. On the colony's observation deck, a young lookout squinted through his scope and frowned. "Commander, there's something big out there." Commander Rin joined him, adjusting the scope. At first he saw nothing, only empty space. And then it happened. The stars began to disappear. One by one, tiny points of light winked out, swallowed by an enormous shadow moving silently across the void. The shape was massive, larger than anything Rin had ever seen, its surface glinting faintly as the light from Solara's sun caught the edges of metal. It moved with purpose, slow but unstoppable, and as it turned, vast rows of weapons and shield arrays became visible. Rin's breath caught. "That's not an asteroid," he whispered. Above Solara, the Zerath fleet's sensors screamed with alerts. On the alien flagship, General Vekar leaned over the tactical display. "High Warlord, we have detected an unidentified mass entering the battle space. Size, enormous, comparable to a small moon." Krathos narrowed his eyes. "A human station?" "No, my lord," Vekar replied, his voice tense. "This is different." Krathos gave a humorless laugh. "Different will die the same." But his gaze lingered on the growing shadow, and even he felt a sliver of curiosity. The massive shape continued forward, and now faint lines of blue light began to glow across its armored surface, tracing patterns like the veins of some great living thing. In the Aegis's bridge, Admiral Holt watched the alien fleet draw nearer, on the tactical map. "All hands, prepare for visual reveal," she ordered. The ship's forward shields shimmered into place, forming a translucent barrier of energy around the hull. The Aegis rotated slightly, positioning its main weapons toward the enemy, and then, with a low, resonant hum, activated its full power grid. The blue lights running along the hull flared brighter, and in that instant the ship was no longer a shadow. It was a titan. On Solara, the people who had been staring at the alien fleet now saw the newcomer rising behind them. Gasps and shouts filled the streets as the image spread across colony screens. Some cried out in disbelief, others simply stood frozen, eyes wide. "What is that?" someone whispered. "It's ours," another voice said with certainty, though no one could explain how they knew. On the alien flagship, Vekar's claws tightened on the railing. "High Warlord, their ship is heavily armed. Multiple weapon types, shield arrays unlike anything in our records." Krathos's voice was calm, but laced with irritation. "So, the humans had a secret. It will not save them." Holt's voice rang across the Aegis bridge. "Weapons test. Target that asteroid at grid 7-3. The gunners locked on, and a moment later, a beam of pure white energy lanced from the ship's primary cannon. It crossed the distance in an instant, striking the asteroid and shattering it into glowing fragments that scattered into the void. The explosion lit up the darkness, and in its reflection, the alien fleet's formations could be seen shifting uneasily. On Solara, cheers erupted. For the first time, the humans saw proof that something powerful was on their side. Holt turned to her weapons chief. Begin charging all main batteries. Fighters, stand by for launch. Across the Aegis's vast hangar decks, rows of sleek human strike craft hummed to life, their cockpits sealing as pilots ran final checks. In the alien fleet, Krathos's patience snapped. Form attack wings. We will crush their ship before it can fire again. But as his orders spread, the Aegis's shield projectors flared fully to life, enveloping the ship in a glowing sphere of energy. The Zerath had faced shields before, but never ones that registered so high on their power readings. Vekar frowned, a rare feeling settling in his chest. Doubt. On Solara, Jace stood in the middle of a repair team, his tools hanging forgotten. In his hands as he stared at the colossal ship in the distance. "That's the reinforcements," he said softly. Around him, others nodded, their work quickening, as if the sight alone had given them new strength. Above, the alien fleet began to move, their crimson lights brightening as engines roared. The sky over Solara filled with motion, the quiet before the storm ending as two titans prepared to meet in battle. The Aegis glided forward through the darkness, like a predator closing in on its prey, its vast hull glowing faintly with blue energy, its weapons hot and ready. On the bridge, Admiral Holt's eyes stayed locked on the tactical display, watching the red shapes of the Zerath fleet shifting into attack formation. "Helm, bring us into range," she ordered. The massive ship adjusted course with smooth precision, its engines humming with deep power. On the alien flagship, High Warlord Krathos leaned forward on his throne, his eyes narrowing as the human vessel grew larger on his view screen. "They want to fight? Then we will give them a war," he growled. Squadrons of Zerath war cruisers broke from the main formation, their jagged hulls glinting under distant starlight as they accelerated toward the newcomer. General Vekar studied the approaching ship carefully, noting its shield strength and unusual weapon configurations. "High Warlord, we should not underestimate them," he warned. Krathos gave a low laugh. "They are still human. We have broken greater foes." Back on the Aegis, Holt's voice was calm but carried a steel edge. "Target their lead war cruisers. Fire main battery on my mark. One shot, one kill." The gunner's hands hovered over their controls, waiting. The distance closed, the enemy ships growing larger on the forward display. "Mark," Holt said. A blinding white beam erupted from the Aegis primary cannon, slicing through space and striking the lead alien war cruiser dead center. In less than a second, the ship's shields collapsed, its hull tearing apart in a violent explosion that scattered burning debris in all directions. The bridge of the Aegis was silent for a heartbeat, then filled with controlled urgency as Holt gave. Her next orders: "Secondary batteries, open fire, fighters launch." All along the Aegis's flanks, missile ports slid open, releasing waves of guided warheads that streaked toward the enemy. The hangar bays roared as squadrons of sleek human fighters shot into the void, their engines flaring blue. On Solara, the sky lit up with flashes of light as the battle began in earnest. People watched from rooftops and observation decks, their fear slowly turning into awe. They saw alien ships that had seemed invincible only hours before now burning and breaking under human firepower. In the alien fleet, chaos spread quickly. The Aegis's weapons hit harder than anything the Zerath had faced from humans before. 2 more war cruisers exploded, their wreckage tumbling through the void. Krathos slammed a clawed fist onto the arm of his throne. "Concentrate all fire on the human ship! Overload their shields!" The Zerath fleet unleashed a storm of energy. Blasts and plasma bolts, their combined fire striking the Aegis's glowing barrier. The shields flared brightly under the assault, absorbing the impact with a deep, resonant hum. "Shields at 90%, reported the tactical officer. Holt nodded, her face unreadable. "Maintain course. Keep pressing them." In the fighter battle, human pilots weaved between the larger alien ships, striking at weak points and using their smaller size to outmaneuver the enemy. Each kill boosted morale, each evasion kept the fight going longer. On the surface of Solara, Jace and his repair crews worked without pause, patching damaged shield generators and rerouting power to keep the colony safe from stray fire. Every time the ground shook with a distant explosion, they exchanged quick glances but kept working. If the Aegis could hold the enemy off, they could hold their ground. In the alien flagship, Vekar's eyes narrowed as he studied the human ship's combat patterns. "They are not fighting like prey," he murmured. Krathos ignored him, barking more orders. "Bring up the siege cannons. I want that ship torn in half." But before the command could be carried out, the Aegis struck again, this time with its portside rail batteries. A rapid volley of high-velocity slugs slammed into another warcruiser, punching through its armor and igniting its core. The explosion lit up the darkness like a second sun. The alien formation wavered. Holt saw the hesitation and knew it was time to press harder. "Push forward! Drive them back!" she ordered. The Aegis surged ahead, its massive frame moving, with surprising speed for its size, cutting through the center of the enemy formation. Fighters followed in its wake, striking targets of opportunity. On Solara, cheers erupted across the colony as the sight of alien ships retreating from the immediate battle zone spread through every screen. It was not a victory yet, but it was the first real proof that the Zerath could bleed. And above them, the war for their survival had only just begun. The battle above Solara had become a storm of fire and light, but even as the Aegis tore through the Zerath fleet, a new and terrible danger began to rise. On the alien flagship, High Warlord Krathos had grown tired of the exchange of blows. His claws tapped against the arm of his throne as he made his decision. "Prepare the Eclipser," he ordered, his voice low but carrying across the command deck. General Vekar's eyes widened. "The Eclipser is a planet killer, my lord. Using it here will destroy the colony entirely." Krathos bared his teeth in a cold grin. "Exactly. If the humans hide behind their planet, we will remove it from existence." At once, the flagship's forward section began to shift, huge. Armored panels sliding apart to reveal a massive cannon barrel lined with pulsating crimson energy conduits. The alien fleet began to pull back, creating space for the weapon to charge, and the space around the flagship grew darker as energy. From nearby ships and reactors was funneled into the Eclipser. On the bridge of the Aegis, Admiral Holt's tactical officer spoke urgently. "Ma'am, I'm detecting an enormous energy spike from the enemy flagship. Power readings are off the charts. It's aimed at the planet." Holt's gaze snapped to the main display, and her mind calculated the options in an instant. "If that beam fires, Solara is gone," she said quietly, almost to herself. Then her voice hardened. "Helm, bring us between that cannon and the planet. All power to forward shields." The Aegis roared forward, its engines burning hot as it positioned itself directly in the weapon's path. On the surface of Solara, people could see the alien flagship's strange glow building in the distance, and then they saw the human mothership move to block it. Fear and hope clashed in their hearts. In the alien flagship, Vekar's voice was strained. "High Warlord, the human ship is moving to intercept. If they can absorb the blast, the weapon may overheat." Krathos's glare was like ice. "Then we will see if their shields are truly invincible. Fire when ready." The energy along the Eclipser's barrel flared brighter until the very space around it seemed to ripple. And then, with a deafening, otherworldly hum, the weapon unleashed its fury. A colossal beam of deep crimson energy tore through the void, headed straight for Solara, but it met the glowing blue barrier of the Aegis head-on. The impact was immediate and brutal. The shields of the Aegis screamed with strain, flaring bright enough to blind sensors. The entire ship shook violently as the force slammed into it, metal groaning under the stress. "Shields at 60%!" shouted the tactical officer. "Divert auxiliary power from all non-essential systems," Holt commanded. Lights dimmed across the ship as energy was funneled into the shields. The crimson beam kept pushing, an unstoppable tide of destruction, but the Aegis refused to yield. On Solara, people watched the beam hammering against the Mothership. The bay, blue shield holding, flickering but holding. In the flagship, Krathos's grin began to fade as the seconds dragged on. "Increase power to the Eclipser!" he snarled. But even with more energy, the beam's effect was slowing. Inside the Aegis, warning alarms blared as the shield generator overheated. "Shields at 30%!" came the call. Holt gritted her teeth. "Hold the line," she ordered, her voice calm but firm. The crew obeyed, fighting to keep the ship steady. Finally, with a sudden flicker, the crimson beam sputtered and died, its massive charge exhausted. The space around the Aegis fell silent, except for the hum of cooling systems. "Shields at 12%, the tactical officer reported. Holt allowed herself a single breath of relief. "Now," she said, "return the favor." The Aegis's primary cannon rotated toward the alien flagship, its capacitors already charged from the defensive overload. "Fire!" A beam of pure, white energy erupted, striking the Eclipser directly at its exposed barrel. The weapon's energy conduits shattered, sending arcs of wild electricity racing across the flagship's hull. The explosion was massive, tearing through decks and blowing entire sections into space. On Solara, the sight of the alien weapon being destroyed sent a wave of cheers across the colony. The flagship, though damaged, still floated. But the Eclipser was gone, its threat ended. In the alien command deck, Krathos rose slowly, his face twisted in rage. "They dare!" he growled. Vakar's eyes, however, held something different now, a glint of respect for the human defenders. The battle was far from over, but the balance had shifted, and the Zirath had learned something they would never forget. Humans would not kneel easily. Above Solara, the Aegis turned back toward the heart of the alien fleet, its shields slowly recharging, its weapons ready for the next strike. The war had entered a new phase, and both sides knew it. The smoke of battle still drifted through space as the Aegis advanced, its hull scorched, but its spirit unbroken. The destruction of the Eclipser had stunned the Zirath fleet, creating a brief moment of hesitation, a moment Admiral Holt intended to exploit. "All ships, this is the Aegis," she said over the fleet channel. "We're done holding the line. Now we take the fight to them." Across the sector, human escort ships and support cruisers began to form up, rallying behind. The massive Mothership. Fighter wings returned to refuel and rearm, then launched again with fresh determination. The Zirath fleet still outnumbered them, but the psychological blow of losing their planet killer had shaken their confidence. On the alien flagship, High Warlord Krathos's rage boiled over. "They destroyed our greatest weapon and dare to press forward," he growled. "Form a wall. Do not let them through." But his commands met a fractured response. Some captains obeyed instantly, while others pulled back to regroup. That slight disunity was all Holt needed. "Helm, plot a path straight through their center," she ordered. "Weapons, prioritize. Heavy cruisers. We're going to break their spine." The Aegis surged ahead, leading the formation like the point of a spear. Its primary cannon fired again and again, each shot destroying a Zirath warship in a blinding burst of light. The smaller human ships darted along its flanks, picking off damaged vessels and covering the Mothership from incoming fire. The fighter squadrons became a blur of motion, weaving through enemy formations and planting precision strikes on engines and weapon mounts. The Zirath fought back fiercely. their plasma batteries filling the void with deadly green and red bolts. Explosions tore through several human escorts, scattering debris across the battlefield, but the line kept moving forward. On the surface of Solara, every screen and transmitter was locked on the live feed from the battle, the colonists watching in tense silence. When a Zerath cruiser exploded under human fire, cheers erupted. When a human ship went down, voices fell silent again. But the overall tide was clear. The humans were pushing deeper into the enemy formation than anyone had dared to dream. Inside the alien flagship, General Vekar studied the tactical display. "Hi, Warlord. If they breach the command cluster, our coordination will collapse." Krathos's eyes blazed. "Then move the command cluster, isolate them, force the Mothership to fight alone." Signals rippled through the Zerath fleet as several wings began to reposition, but Holt saw the shift instantly. "They're trying to split us," she told her officers. "We won't let them. Signal all ships, tight formation. Anyone who falls behind will be exposed." The battle became a moving brawl, with the Aegis pushing ever forward while alien ships tried to encircle them. The shields of the Mothership were holding, but each hit drained power reserves. In the engineering deck, teams worked frantically to reroute damaged systems and maintain full weapon output. Suddenly, Holt's tactical officer looked up from his console. "Admiral, we're in range to deploy the Nova Spear." A slow, dangerous smile crossed Holt's face. The Nova Spear was a classified human weapon, an experimental projectile, designed to pierce even the heaviest enemy shields by creating a micro-singularity on impact. "Load it," Holt ordered. "Target their flagship." Across the bow of the Aegis, hatches slid open to reveal the massive weapon, its sleek silver surface lined with faintly glowing patterns. Energy fields began to hum as the Nova Spear's core charged. In the alien flagship, Vekar's eyes narrowed as his sensors picked up the spike. "They are preparing something," he warned. Krathos dismissed it with a wave. "No human weapon can breach our flagship." Holt gave the firing order. The Nova Spear launched in a streak of white and blue light, accelerating faster than any conventional missile. It tore through the battlefield, dodging counterfire with its adaptive guidance system, and struck the flagship's forward shields. For a moment, the Zerath barrier flared bright, and then collapsed as the micro-singularity bloomed, ripping a hole straight through the armor. The explosion was deafening, even in the vacuum, a wave of light and debris scattering across the enemy formation. The alien flagship reeled, its bow shredded and burning. On Solara, the people erupted in cheers so loud they drowned out the emergency sirens. In the flagship's command deck, Krathos gripped the arm of his throne hard enough to crack it. His pride was wounded as much as his ship. "This is not over," he snarled. But for the first time, Vekar's voice was firm and unshaken. "Perhaps, my lord, it is." Above the planet, the Zerath fleet was beginning to falter, their once perfect formation now a ragged scattering of ships trying to regroup. Holt saw the opening and took it. "All ships, press the attack. This is our moment." Engines flared, weapons roared, and the humans surged forward, their confidence soaring. The Aegis, scarred and glowing from battle, led the charge straight toward the crippled alien flagship. The war was not yet won, but the tide had turned, and for the first time in living memory, humanity was not defending. They were advancing. The battlefield above Solara burned with the dying light of dozens of shattered ships, debris drifting in slow, silent arcs as the Aegis drove forward toward its target. The Zerath flagship, once a symbol of unstoppable power, now floated wounded, enlisting, its bow torn open from the Nova Spear strike. Flames flickered along its broken hull, venting air and fragments into space. On the bridge of the Aegis, Admiral Holt stood calm but unyielding, her eyes fixed on the crippled giant ahead. "All weapons, target their engines," she ordered. "We take away their escape before they can regroup." The Aegis's cannons thundered again, white beams lancing into the flagship's rear thrusters until one by one they exploded, leaving the ship adrift. Inside the alien vessel, panic had begun to spread. Officers shouted over one another as systems failed, and the once proud corridors were filled with smoke and sparking conduits. High Warlord Krathos sat rigid on his throne, his claws digging deep grooves into the metal armrests. General Vakar approached cautiously. "My lord, our fleet is scattering. The humans will surround us within minutes." Krathos's voice was a low growl. "Then let them come. We will fight until the last breath." But there was no mistaking the shadow of doubt in his eyes. Holt's voice cut through the Aegis's bridge. "Prepare a boarding party," she commanded. "We're ending this." Elite Marines in reinforced armor assembled in the hangar bay, weapons charged and ready. Dropships launched from the Mothership, cutting through the chaos of battle and slipping past the last Zerath escorts to latch onto the wounded flagship's hull. With magnetic clamps locking in place, the Marines breached the outer airlocks and stormed inside. The interior of the alien ship was a maze of dim corridors lit only by emergency lights, the air thick with smoke. Resistance came quickly. Zerath. Soldiers firing from cover, their guttural war cries echoing down the halls. The humans moved with precision, returning fire and pushing forward in disciplined formations. Every step brought them closer to the command deck where Krathos waited. In the flagship's throne room, the warlord rose slowly, his massive frame casting a long shadow across the scorched floor. "So the humans come for me themselves," he rumbled. Vakar watched him silently, his own loyalty tested by the days. Events. The doors to the chamber burst open, and the human Marines entered, weapons leveled. Their commander stepped forward, voice steady. "High Warlord Krathos, by order of the United Human Defense Fleet, you are hereby taken prisoner." Krathos laughed, a deep echoing sound. "Prisoner? No, humans. You may have damaged my fleet, but you will not take me alive." With a roar, he lunged, his claws flashing in the dim light. The Marines opened fire, but the warlord's armor absorbed much of the barrage as he closed the distance, swatting one soldier aside with bone-breaking force. The fight turned brutal and close, energy bolts lighting the air as the Marines tried to bring him down. It took a coordinated strike, 3 soldiers firing into his side while another planted an electromagnetic charge on his chest to finally bring the giant to his knees. Sparks danced across his armor as the EMP scrambled, his systems, and Krathos fell forward, breathing heavily. Still, his eyes burned with defiance. "You have not won," he growled. The Marine commander stepped closer. "Look outside, Warlord. Your fleet is broken. This battle is over." Krathos's gaze flicked to the shattered remains of his armada. Through the viewports, and for the first time, the fire in his eyes dimmed. He gave a slow, heavy exhale and lowered his head. Vakar stepped forward, his voice quiet but certain. "Perhaps, my lord, this was the lesson you refused to learn. They were never defenseless." With the warlord restrained and taken into custody, the Marines withdrew to their dropships, leaving the crippled flagship adrift in the silence of space. On the Aegis, Admiral Holt received the report with a firm nod. "Transmit to all channels," she ordered. "Solara is safe. The Zerath are defeated." Across the colony, cheers erupted. People embraced, cried, and looked to the sky with renewed hope. The image of the human mothership, scarred, battered, but still standing, would be remembered for generations. In the aftermath, human ships moved through the battlefield, rescuing survivors and collecting the wounded. The Zerath fleet, leaderless and scattered, retreated into the far reaches of space. Some ships simply powered down and surrendered. As the Aegis turned toward Solara, its massive shadow passing over the planet, Admiral Holt allowed herself a rare moment to breathe. "We held the line," she said softly, "and then we took it back." The war was not over. There would be other battles, other enemies. But the message was clear to every world within range of the transmission. Humanity was not weak, not helpless, and not alone. They had stood against the darkness, and the darkness had broken.